Happy Sunday. Beautiful day out here to walk, enjoy the weather. Just taking a walk, thinking about life, thinking about things. Let me clear this. Yeah, just thinking about life in general, thinking about every day, not taking it for granted. Uh, Beautiful Sunday. If you live on the East Coast, beautiful out here, southeast of America. Beautiful weather, beautiful weather. Hope you're having a great day. I know a lot of y'all went to church today. So I want to talk about church. I want to talk about religion. You know, I want to talk about what people believe as far as religion. Uh, it's a lot of things, a lot of things that's different, differentiated, if that's a word. you know, you have so many different sects inside of Christianity. You have Baptists, you have Methodists, you have Presbyterian, you have Lutheran, you got AME, you got Holiness, Pentecostal, Kojic, and all these different sects, different divisions or denominations inside of Christianity. They all believe different things. And the thing that ties them together is tradition. Each one of those denomination or divisions, they have certain traditions that they follow, and those traditions they count as being something that allows them to feel more closer to God. I feel like those things, traditions, are unnecessary, but man has made those things as being something that will have you closer to the Creator, closer to God. Certain denominations, they have communion, they have things where they have to wear white gloves, and they feel like that's the right thing. They feel like if you don't do those things, it's not right. And I grew up in a church where, you had to have black clothing during communion. You had to have a certain type of clothing to go to church. What's up, Art? BRS. And so it's a lot of traditions, but I feel like the real war is tradition versus facts. Tradition versus facts. A lot of people don't believe in Jesus because they don't have actual facts that Jesus existed. And I know this video is going to be very controversial if you're very religious or really deep in Christianity. Tradition versus facts. I do believe that there is a creator. Honestly, I'm learning more about Jesus. I do believe that there is a creator. I think everything exists because of a creator. But do I know everything about God? Do I know everything about Jesus? No, I don't. And I believe that doesn't give somebody more of I wouldn't say more of a chance, but more of a, opportunity to make it to heaven. And, I don't really know much about, we all don't know in this physical body about, Jesus. We don't know a lot about heaven. I should say heaven. But, of course, once we go back to the dirt, you know, we'll know all we need to know about if heaven or hell exists, you know. And so, I just got to talk about that because I think we're in an era now where people are more spiritual than religious, you know. It's so much technology, it's so much knowledge that is very, very accessible to people these days. And they know, and I hate to say it, but they have more knowledge than people that's been in church for years, because people that's been in church for years, they're afraid to open their minds to other logical reasonings of existence, logical reasonings of existence, and so, it's just, having an open mind, that's why I talk about these things on this channel, open-minded conversation. Because a lot of people get stuck in their own way of thinking and feel like there's no other way. Or what I know is for facts without doing the proper research or history, to learn if these things ever existed in the first place, it goes with holidays. We don't really know the history of these things unless we really was there. I used to be critical on Christmas, learning things about Christmas, but do I know the actual thing, about Christmas to really say, if I celebrate, these things or not? And so, it's just a lot of things we think about too much, or we overwhelm ourselves with, and we don't know all the facts about certain things that we believe. That's all it is to it. But it's good to have this type of conversation about these things. But again, appreciate y'all for being in here. Appreciate y'all for watching. But it's like I said, tradition. And like the title of this video, tradition, versus facts as far as religion. And if you have anything to contribute to this conversation, feel free to. I think, throughout my life, I've always been very open-minded. That's why I named the channel Open-Minded Conversations. I was a person that always thought outside the box, always thought outside the box. And always been very inquisitive about things that I learned. I didn't just accept anything that I learned. I asked questions about those things that I learned in life. And I think everybody should be that way. Don't just accept any type of doctrine. Don't accept any type of belief. Like I said, I used to be critical at one point, 2 or 3 years ago, about holidays, about Christmas, about, those things, because I learned so much history about why Christmas and holidays were pagan. That a lot of these holidays we celebrated are pagan holidays. And later on, I started thinking about, spending time with family. Am I really going to let these beliefs or these belief systems, take me away from spending time with family You know, you see, especially this year, a lot of people are leaving this earth, and you know, you don't want to be to a point where you lose loved ones and you regret not spending those precious moments with your family because of something. You know, it's like, you know, the question is, and there's so many people that believe in God, so many thousands, millions of people that believe in God. And so, you know, is all of these people going to hell because they celebrate Christmas, you know, giving gifts to their children on this day, this one day of the year? You know, I started thinking about that, you know. I started thinking about that, you know, but I still have a balance about Christmas. Me and my wife decided that, you know, we'll you know, spend time with our family during the holidays, you know, spend quality time with our families. But we decided we wouldn't put up Christmas trees and stuff in our house because we still really want to know the true meaning of the traditions of like the Christmas tree and the Christmas wreath and things of that nature. And so we decided, you know, we'll spend time with our families during those moments, but we wouldn't put up those types of things around our house. So that's what we decided to do to create a balance, you know, because we don't really want to create a huge division, you know, during those times. We don't want those times to be stressful where, Dad, we wish we could have spent time with our family during these moments. You know, we the only ones not there during these family moments, you know. And so, you know, we decided, you know, we were not going to put up Christmas trees and stuff like that. But, you know, we'll spend time with family and stuff like that to create a balance as far as Christmas and these holidays is concerned. So, yeah, you know, it's all about tradition versus facts. I think we be so caught up in tradition and things of that nature that we miss out on things in life that we could be doing to really make our life not only purposeful but enjoyable. You know, people wait to the end of their life. They have a bucket list. You know, why don't you start on your bucket list when you're young? You know, when you're a young adult. You know, why don't you start on those things now? There's a lot of places I always wanted to go in life that I haven't been yet. And hopefully one day I'll make it to those places before this life is over. You know, and so, you know, just gotta consider those things, you know. Don't take life so serious. And I think with religion, you know, people take life so serious and they don't enjoy their life. You know, they spend day after day at church and they don't spend time with their families. They don't spend time just enjoying life and traveling around the world, you know, discovering new things, discovering new activities, discovering new skills. And so, you know, think about those things, consider those things when it comes to religion and having that life and religion balance and finding, you know, discovering for yourself. You know, I come from a very religious household. You know, I come from a very religious household, and a lot of things that I learned from my childhood, now I don't really, I study for myself, and I found some things questionable, you know, things that I learned. You know, when you get older, you start having your own mind. You start researching things for yourself if you're an open-minded individual. You know, some generations, they just follow, you know, what their family has done. And some people in the next generation, they discover things for themselves, you know. And so, yeah, you know, discover facts and stuff about the Bible for yourself. Don't just believe everything you hear. You know, do your own research, do diligent research on these things. You know. So again, appreciate y'all for watching. Appreciate y'all for tuning in into this live about religion. But all right, peace.